أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولله الحمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم اجعل قلبي بارا ولسانا وشكارا ورزقي دارا وأولادي أبرارا واجعلني عند قبر نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم مستقر وقرارا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي كان موجودا قبل حدوث الأشياء ويبقى بعد فناء الأشياء. تفرد بالأولية والقدم ووسم كل شيء ما عداه بالفناء والعدم. كما قال عز شأن كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه وكل نفس ذائقة الموت. وقال كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام. سبحان من لا يخفى عليه اختلاف النيات ولا يعزم عنه ما العباد في الخلوات. سبحان الله الذي منه خلقة العباد وإليه المعاد. فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خير يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شر يره. نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو الملك الذي لا ينازع في ملكه ولا يضاد في حكمه. يعذب من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء ويرحم من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء. تعذيبه المسيئين عدل وعفوه تفضل. ونشهد أن محمدا سيد المرسلين وخير المبشرين والمنذرين صلى الله عليه وآله الهداة المهديين. من ركب سفينتهم نجا واهتدى ومن تخلف عنها ضل فغرق وهوى. أوصيكم عباد الله بالاعتصام بالتقوى فإنه حبل متين وعروة وثقى فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وكذلك آثرنا عليهم ليعلموا أن وعد الله حق وأن الساعة لا ريب فيها إذ يتنازعون بينهم أمرهم فقالوا ابنوا عليهم بنيانا ربهم أعلم بهم قال الذين غلبوا على أمرهم لنتخذن عليهم مسجدا صدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I begin by advising myself and all of you to practice the piety and the taqwa of Allah as is the best of provisions. The verse that I recited is from Surah Kahf, ayat number 21, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the story, one of the greatest stories that we find in Quran is discussed in this chapter. Of course, the whole chapter is named after the cave or Ashab-e-Kahf, the people of the cave. Now there are many examples that we can draw from the story of the people of the cave, and I'm sure this is not a new story for anyone by any stretch of imagination. You've heard it many times. Many aspects of it may even have read it in depth and in detail. But inshallah, what I'll do today in this brief time that I have regarding some of the background of the discussion containing the story of the people of Kahf, why they went, what happened, all those things I'm sure all of you are aware of, but those things that are relevant to us, especially in this day and age. When we look upon the concept of being able to visit the graves, or in keeping in mind the tragedy that took place over 100 years ago in Hidame, Jannatul Baqi, destruction of the shrines of holy personalities in Mecca and Medina. So I recited this ayat number 21, which says, so it was we let them come upon them, that they might know that Allah's promise is true, and that there is no doubt in the hour. The Qiyamah will eventually come. As they disputed amongst themselves about their matter, they said, build a building over them. Their Lord knows best. Those who had the say in the matter, they said, we will set up a place of worship over them. So there were two opinions that were given according to this ayat of Quran 21, Surah Kahf. People who came upon the cave after having found out, they gave two different opinions regarding what to do with Ashabul Kahf. The little background is that Ashab-e-Kahf, after fleeing the tyrant ruler of their time who was forcing them to worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in order to safeguard their iman and their faith, they left. When they fled, they arrived in this cave, and they settled over there, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused them to sleep for 309 years, according to the ayat of Quran. It says, وَلَبِثُوا فِي كَهْفِهِمْ ثَلَاثَمِائَةٍ سِنِينَ وَازْدَادُوا تِسْعًا. That literally they slept in this cave for 309 years. One of them, after waking up, after 309 years, they all woke up. And one of them said, we feel hungry. The first thing is the human needs that they have. So let's go get something to eat. One of them went outside the city to go ahead and buy some bread, buy some food, and bring it back to them. Of course, at this point, they have no idea how long they have slept, because the previous ayat of Quran in Surah Kahf before 21, there's a discussion going on between them. We slept for a day and a half. That's what their understanding is. Why? Because their physical appearance hasn't changed. They still are the same age that they were at the time they had slept. So they have no idea how long has passed over them. So one of them went out to Ephesus to buy food with coin from the Emperor Decius' time. So they lived in the time of Emperor Decius, and he went out to buy some food using the same coin that he had from 309 years ago. When he came, he attracted attention, especially with the coin that he was using. Shopkeeper thought that he dug up some treasure somewhere and he found this coins that are 300 years old. He recognized it. Today, I'm sure many of us who have this sort of habit and collection, we can look at some of these things. I wouldn't be able to tell you, but I'm sure many of you have this capability that this is, or sometimes the number or the year is mentioned on it. And so they said, well, this is ancient. This is 300 years old. And the libas that person was wearing was also alarming, that we don't wear this libas anymore. The language that he was speaking was also slightly different. You can tell that too. People that lived here 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, right here in this New Jersey, their mode of communication may still have been English, but slightly different dialect that they used to speak. That's why you have these different dialects are all over the place. So when he saw this, it attracted attention with his attire, with his language. Turned out to be one of the followers of Deen of the time. So turned out that he was also muwahid. And that king that they had fled from is long gone. And that king, his atrocities and his tyranny is long gone. Now this land is being followed by the muwahideen, those who believe in one God, and there's nothing to fear anymore because you fled. They weren't allowed you to worship one God. The news immediately spread throughout the city, and a big crowd of people started gathering. Along with them was Christian Roman ruler. They arrived at the scene of the cave. Now they're all over there gathered. This is a phenomena that they all want to be part of and understand and try and decipher as to what has taken place, which is still not believable by many of them. But the signs are telling otherwise. There were many things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to declare and prove to the people of that time. And I'll tell you what were those. At the time of the occurrence, people of that land, they were in doubt about the resurrection and the hereafter. They didn't quite believe that there is resurrection, there is qiyamah, that there is a life after death. They were having doubts about it, as many people today still have doubts that there is life after death. Sadducee is one of the Jewish clans or the Jewish sects which influenced them as well, which of course believed that there isn't any hereafter and you live in this life and you die and that is it. This is why the disbelievers in the hereafter had upper hand even on the believers. They started doubting their own faith. That happens. If majority starts giving you some sort of influence or news and it becomes prevalent, and we are also victim to this. News is something of that sort. When you start hearing the same news from all media channels, you start believing it, right? News come about that so-and-so has attacked and, the attack has begun and the news is spread left and right. Turns out it wasn't really an attack. Nothing happened. But the news got out. Or, for example, other similar fake news that you have been accustomed to now hearing that makes it to the mainstream media, and right away what happens? It's all over the world. It's all over the place. People start believing in it, and then comes a rebuke and refutation. Oh, no, this was false. There's no truth to it. No, the news is already out. And therefore, at that time as well, this Sadducee, this Jewish clan or sect, they started imposing their beliefs. So even those who were muwahideen, Christians, they believed in the hereafter, they started doubting their own madhab, they started doubting their own belief system of resurrection and the hereafter. It was at that time that the sleepers of the cave were raised up and furnished an absolute proof of the life after death, and the scales in favor of the believers was turned. So when they woke up after 309 years, this became apparent to them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is capable, more than capable, of raising people back from dead, as he did just now with Ashab-e-Kahf after 309 years. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now this is the story. Up until this point, there isn't any difference amongst the narrators of this story that what we have received amongst our books and books of all of the madhahib of Islam. They have pretty much the same account, different names here and there, but they have pretty much the same account of the story of Ashab-e-Kahf. Of course, derived from the ayat of Quran. You can't deny the ayat of Quran. After which, the the take on this story is where we have difference of opinion. So I'll share with you what some of the Ahl Sunnah tafasir mention, especially in reference to the dispute, as the ayat of Quran says what? إِذْ يَتَنَازَعُونَ بَيْنَهُمْ. They started disputing. The two groups started disputing. No, Quran doesn't mention who these two groups are. One said, let's build a building on top of it. The other said, no, let's build a masjid, according to the ayat. لَنَتَّخِذَنَّ عَلَيْهِمْ مَسْجِدًا. Now, there's no concept of masjid at the time. They're not Muslims, for sure. This is in the year 431, in the present day, in common era. So that is about 140 years before the birth of Rasulullah. So this is definitely before Islam. There's no concept of masjid. Yeah, masjid as in Arabic, a place of sajda, that exists. What is masjid? Masjid is a place of sajda. That's where the word masjid comes from, the place of sujood. That concept is there in the language. But masjid in a sense that we have masjid, so let me explain. There are words that were used prior to Islam in Arabic language, because the Arabic language was there, was used in Islam, prior to Islam for something, but after the advent of Islam, they start using for something specific. Few examples. Example of salat. The word salat always existed, but it did not mean 5-time prayers, the way you and I pray. The word salat means supplication, and still is used for supplication. Similarly, the word hajj. The word hajja means qasd, intention. People would use the word hajj when they wanted to say, someone intends to do this. But after Islam, when hajj and the practices of hajj became wajib, this was given the name of hajj. And similarly, many other things that are called manqul. Why are they manqul? They were used for something else prior to Islam. Now they are used specifically as a terminology for this specific thing. With that understanding, now you know the word masjid is used in this ayat, not necessarily for a masjid that you and I are accustomed to knowing, but nonetheless a place where sajda is done. And you find that even in the previous divine religions, there is a concept of prostration. There is a concept of ruku and sujood. When you read about Hazrat Maryam salamullah alayha, when you read about other anbiya, there's a concept of sajda, and Hazrat Isa, and those ayat in Quran are there. So the dispute is about these two things. Group number one said, فَقَالُوا إِبْنُوا عَلَيْهِمْ بُنْيَانًا. Let's build a building on top of it. It appears from the context, now this is from the tafasir of Ahl Sunnah, that this was the saying of the righteous people among the Christians. Now how do you get this? We don't know. Maybe there are hadiths regarding this. This was the thing of the righteous people amongst the Christians. They were of the opinion that wall should be raised at the entrance of the cave in order to let the sleepers remain in their same condition as they were before. And for that they argued, their Lord only knows better about them. So let's go ahead and build a wall. The dispute was that Ashab-e-Kahf, after the whole story is now known to the entire community, what did they decide to do? I'm sure all of you know. They decided to go back to the cave. When they went back to the cave, they said, oh Allah, we were better off the way we were before. Even though there isn't any tyrant ruler out there anymore, but it's still fear of our faith. So bring us back to the way we were before. So some thought that they went back to sleeping, as they had slept for 309 years. And then some thought, no, they're now dead. They're no longer alive. This is permanent. They're not waking up from this anymore. They are dead. So there was a dispute over that. Second group. Now, for some reason, those who said raise a wall so that they would be blocked from entrance, they were considered to be the righteous people. Now they paint, قَالُوا الَّذِينَ غَلَبُوا عَلَىٰ أَمْرِهِمْ. The people, those who prevailed in this matter, meaning what? Their word was counted. The previous word was rejected. Their word was counted. Those who said, لَنَتَّخِذَنَّ عَلَيْهِمْ مَسْجِدًا. Those who said, let's build a masjid on top of it. Their word prevailed. How did they paint this? They were the Roman rulers and the priests of the Christian church who did not let the religious Christians have their way. This is because the middle of the 5th century, the common people, especially the Orthodox amongst the Christian, had become fully involved in shirk and the worship of the saints and the tombs. They used to visit tombs of the saints to worship them and to keep the statues of Hazrat Isa and Bibi Maryam and apostles in their churches. In fact, these were the people who were upholders of shirk and who decided to build mausoleums, should be built over the cave and the sleepers to be made a place of worship. Now somehow they derive that the second group, which wanted to build the masjid on top, were mushrikeen. Where amongst the Christians, they were known as mushrikeen. These are the ones who brought shirk into Christianity. These are the people who used to keep the statues of Hazrat Isa and Hazrat Maryam salamullah alayhima. They are the ones who used to keep the statues of other Anbiya as well. They are the ones who used to build the statues of the saints. And they are the ones who introduced, idol worshipping or shirk by any other way possible into the madhab of Christianity. This Sunni Mufassir, he goes on to say, it is irony that some people among the Muslims have misconstrued this verse of the Quran so as to make it lawful for them to build mausoleums and the shrines and monuments and mosques over the tombs of the righteous people and personalities. See how he's trying to draw it into our direction. That while Shias allow shrines to be built, they allow that, the Aimma Athar, their, maqbara should be place where people can visit and go for the ziyarat at ease. The Quran has in fact pointed out the deviation of the workers of iniquity who prevailed upon others and built a place of worship over the cave of the sleepers, who were indeed a sign of resurrection and of the life after death, but they abused this good opportunity and produced another means of practicing shirk. Look at the way this ayat is explained. Now, of course, anyone reading this does not want to go further beyond any studies. This is the tafsir. I'm going to take the word of this mufassir as is. And today, if I see any similar practice happening, I'll put these two together. And so when it was wrong then, it is wrong today. Now, let me just explain quickly as I'm running out of my time. The word mosque, I'm sure you paid attention to this. The word masjid that the ayat narrates. Surah Kahf 21, لَنَتَّخِذَنَّ عَلَيْهِمْ مَسْجِدًا. Second group said what? Let's build a masjid on top of it. I already mentioned the concept of masjid in the sense that you and I use masjid is not there because there's no Islam at that time. Islam is the one which introduced the place of sajda, masjid. But as a common general place which Quran wants to narrate and talk about of those people where they would prostrate is also referred to as masjid. So the term mosque is a monotheistic and a divine term. And in Quran it is mentioned in a place prepared for the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only, not for anything else. And for His prostration only, not for anything. And that is the reason our fuqaha also mention they do not give permission to doing sajda in front of the shrines of ma'asumin. They said this is not allowed, this is not permissible. Someone does it out of their own, for example, ta'zeem, but if you are muqallid, fuqaha say no, this is not permissible. Why? This might lead someone to believe that you are doing sajda to ghaire khuda, which is not permissible, whether it's madhab Shia or whether it's madhab tasannun. So the verses such as Surah Jinn, ayat number 18, which says, and the mosques are for Allah. That, masajid lillahi, that masajid are only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The word masjid is used in Surah Jinn, ayat number 18 as well. And discussed verses that we just mentioned right now that make a masjid on top of it. To the divine nature of this term is being alluded in this ayat as well. Masjid is being used in that divine way which the masjid's purpose is. Hence the term for other places of worship in Quran, Allah does not say masjid. When Allah talks about the place of worship for non-Muslims, Allah does not use the word masjid. There are ma'abad, there are a place of worship that they use the word ma'abad is used, for example. Or other words are used in Quran, but the word masjid is never used for those of other religions that use the place for their ibadat. For example, the word ma'abad gives you the polytheistic terminology or connotation. Quran says, for example, ma na'buduhum illa liyuqarribuna ila Allahi zulfa. We only worship them. The idol worshippers were saying, this is Surah Zumar, ayat number 3. The idol worshippers who used to worship and prostrate in front of their idols, they said, we do not do ibadat to them except that they bring us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the word ibadat is used where they used to do it, in their ma'bad, in their temple. Quran does not call places of idol worship mosques, but rather it has placed mosque opposite to even synagogues, monasteries, and churches. Synagogues, monasteries, and churches where muwahideen, right, Christians and Jews, they are worshipping. Even those places are mentioned in muqabil, in front of masjid. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not even call a church a masjid. Allah does not even call synagogue a masjid. Allah does not even call a monastery a masjid. Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala call a place where people are worshipping idols to be masjid? This is not what Quran does. Quran sets the standard for you. In fact, this ayat which I recited for you, Surah Hajj, ayat number 40 says, had not Allah repulsed the people from one another, ruin would have befallen the monasteries, the churches, the synagogues, and the mosques. The word mosque did not have to be used here, but Allah uses the word mosque over here to differentiate between synagogues and churches and mosques. This ayat number 18 from Surah Jinn, all prove the fact that the word masjid is not used for any place other than where only Allah is worshipped. وَيُذْكَرُ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ فِيهِ, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, أَنْ يَرْفَعَ ذِكْرُ اللَّهِ, where the dhikr of Allah is raised, only that place is considered to be masjid. Based on this verse, لَنَتَّخِذَنَّ عَلَيْهِمْ مَسْجِدًا, that Ashab-e-Kahf, those people who said, let's build a masjid on top of it. Quran didn't forbid building a masjid on top of graves, even if it's not meant in the terminological aspect, Masjid-e-Istilahi, therefore building a place of worship on top of their resting place was a righteous word, and Quran didn't ban it, did not stop them from doing so. The rad could have come after Allah said this was their word, not my word. Quran quotes words of mushrikeen and non-Muslims. Allah does come back and negates it. The fact that He did not negate it, that means there's nothing wrong if this practice was done. That's number one. Number two, we look at the word yatanaza'una bainahum. They were doing tanazu. So what this first aspect proves, not that we are in favor of building a masjid on top of a grave. No, that's not what we're propagating. But we're saying if there is a shrine built on top of a grave, it's nothing wrong according to the ayat of Quran. These people of Ashab-e-Kahf, they said, let's build a place of ibadat where we will worship only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But because of this saint who's buried over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not stop them from doing so. Could have easily rejected this concept in Quran. Quran has many ayat. Allah could have rejected it at any place else, as He has rejected many such ideas which are polytheistic in Quran, but did not reject this. The fact that He didn't reject it means it is permissible for one to have a masjid. Is it the best thing? Maybe not. But is it haram? That is not the case. So with that said, yatanaza'una, they disputed with one another concerning the people of the cave. What was the dispute? Many ara have been given in this regard. Number one dispute was over Qayamat, Ma'ad Jismani. That even today, many of the Muslims don't believe that we will be raised on the Day of Judgment with our bodies. They believe ruh will be brought back. The soul will be brought back. This ayat proves that the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was able to bring these people back from dead with their bodies and their soul, Allah can easily bring us back on the Day of Judgment with our bodies and our soul. Especially when the ayat of Quran says, يُبْعَثُ مَنْ فِي الْقُبُورِ, Allah will raise that which is in the grave. What is in the grave? Is the soul in the grave? No, the bodies are in the grave. So these ayat tell us that Ma'ad, Qayamat is jismani. It's bodily. Ma'ad and Qayamat is not spiritual. Number two, the dispute was over Ashab-e-Kahf. Were they dead or were they sleeping? I already explained that, so I won't go into detail. Number three, dispute between mushrikeen who said Ashab-e-Kahf were followers of their religion. Let's go ahead and build their place of worship. While those whose kalam prevailed, they said, no. They were followers of a monotheistic religion. That's the reason they fled the tyrant ruler. We belong to them. They belong to us. We'll build a place of worship of our on top of the resting place of Ashab-e-Kahf. And number four dispute was over the length of time. How long did they spend in the cave? How many of them were there? Were there 3? Were there 4? Were there 5? As the next few ayat talk about it, ثَلَاثَةٌ رَابِعُهُمْ كَلْبُهُمْ خَمْسَةٌ سَادِسُهُمْ كَلْبُهُمْ سَبْعَةٌ ثَامِنُهُمْ كَلْبُهُمْ. There were 5, the 6th one was the dog. There were 6, the 7th one was a dog. There were 8, 9th one was a dog. This was the discussion, the dispute that they had. And you can see different types of people, different types of disputes. Some have very low disputes where easy, you can easily understand. Some had more theological disputes. And lastly, dispute over Qiyamah. The event happened when people doubted that there is Qiyamah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by raising these Ashab-e-Kahf from their sleep, from their death back to life again, is a sign, yes, there is life after death, and there is going to be an advent of Qiyamah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I have run out of my time, but the point would not be clear if I did not go into this discussion, that there are, riwayat in the books of other madhahib of Islam that forbid building anything on top of graves. And that's why the Wahhabism started this practice. It started demolishing the graves. It started destructing them, saying in the name of monotheism and in order to remove any polytheistic signs from the Muslim world. Ibn Hajar considers it to be a major sin, narrates ahadith from Sahih Sitta. One of the ahadith I'll mention for you. لعن الله لعن رسول الله زائرات القبور والمتخذين عليها المساجد. Rasulullah curses those who visit the graves and those who build masajid on top of the graves. It's straightforward. You can get anything more straightforward than this hadith. This is, of course, in Musnad Ahmad ibn Hanbal and other books of hadith, which clearly states that Rasulullah curses that individual who visits the grave or those who build something on top of the grave. So they just take these ahadith and they say, well, that is the reason we should not have any graves with any sort of mausoleums on top of them, and that is the reason for their destruction. From these ahadith, which are found in their Sahih, they give fatwa that making the graves of awliya a place of worship leads to shirk, idol worship, and thus it is something which is forbidden. While they show animosity towards those who do build mausoleums and shrines, as the Shias do, we have the shrine of Imam Hussein, we have the shrine of Sayyid Imam Amirul Mu'mineen, we have the shrine of our 8th Imam, and we have the shrines of other Imams in Iraq and in other places. Of course, we mentioned this last night as well. We don't go there to worship the Imams that are buried over there. We go there to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, they bring us closer and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If anything, they are bringing us ever so close, and this taqarrub ilahi is something which is the condition in any ibadat that you perform. Just a little bit later when you start off for your salat, what will you say? Qurbatan ilallah. You're not going to say qurbatan ila shakhs allazi huwa, who's buried over here. No, you say qurbat ilallah. Towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is that what you want, this qurbat? So this is a misunderstanding. Even now, Wahhabis consider the construction of graves and placing shrines on them polytheism, attributing to the superficial emulation to their salaf, according to their belief. Visiting the graves of the prophets and the family with the intention of pilgrimage is considered polytheism and worship of someone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This illegitimate offspring, as I call it, considers the grave of Shia Imams and the prophets of God as examples of polytheism based on their false belief to distance the Islamic Ummah. Look at the feeling that they have. We want to distance the Islamic Ummah from any sort of polytheism, and therefore that is the reason rebuilding any shrines over the graves of anyone, regardless of who that person is forbidden, and it's haram, an act of abomination, and it will never take place according to their fatwa, unless, of course, something changes in their fatwa, meaning you can open up things of that nature which are absolutely forbidden. If those could be allowed, maybe something like this might bring about a change, and one day these things will also be permissible. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. While so much hatred is there when we have this protest on Inhidam Baqi, Ibn Kathir, one of their great writers, in his book Bidayah wa Nihaya, he narrates this. Who is the father of this Wahhabi mentality? Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Kathir, in his Bidayah wa Nihaya, about Ibn Taymiyyah says this. A group of people, after the death of Ibn Taymiyyah, after gave ghusl to him, they sat next to his janazah, recited Quran, they would kiss his body, they would kiss his coffin, they would kiss his tabut. Then a group of women came and did the same exact thing. A large number of people attended the janazah, and they wept during the tashih with loud voices, praising Ibn Taymiyyah, making dua for him. They would throw their turbans and their cloaks on the tabut. Some drank from the leftover water that was used for giving ghusl to him. Some distributed leftover sidr amongst themselves as tabarruk to them. While so much hatred of building a grave or having a shrine, this is the body of Ibn Taymiyyah, the followers of Ibn Taymiyyah, the one who is the father of the Wahhabi mentality. Bukhari narrates, and I'll conclude with this, that Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, who said, I was weeping as removing the cloth from my father's face who had been killed. People will stop me from crying. That don't cry. This will send adhab onto your loved ones. Jabir said, but Rasulullah did not stop me. I did the same thing in front of Rasulullah. Rasulullah did not stop me. Bukhari narrates, لَمَّا قُتِلَ عَبِي جُعِلْتُ أُكْشِفْ ثَوْبَ عَنْ وَجْهِهِ أَبْكِي يَنْهَوْنِي عَنْهُ وَالنَّبِيُّ لَا يَنْهَانِي. People were stopping me, but Rasulullah never stopped me from doing such a thing. And this hadith is also there in Bukhari Sharif. So this is where we understand the concept, the ayat of Surah Hujurat that tells us, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O those who believe, La tuqaddimu bayna yadayi Allahi wa rasulih. Do not venture ahead of the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the commands of His apostle. The moment you venture ahead of command of Allah and the commands of Rasulullah, that is the moment you will start innovating in the religion, and that innovation is definitely something which is zalal. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us a tawfiq in this humble presentation. Maybe people will think and ponder as to the reason why we have the graves and why we visit the graves, and it's not to worship them but to get closer and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with this effort, may the day come in our lives that we're able to see that there are mausoleums built on top of the graves of A'immatul Baqi, inshallah. Inna asal hadith wa ablagh al-mu'idha kitabullah a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim bismillahir rahmanir rahim wal 'asri innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa 'amilus solihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا اله الا هو الحليم الكريم وغافر الذنب وقابل التوب وهو الغفور الرحيم سبحان من سبقت رحمته غضبه وستر اليدين بالرحمه سبحان من لم يكلف نفسا الا دون وسعها وعفى عن السيئات ولم يجاز بها سبحان من لا يزداد ولا معصي لعباد الا كرما وجودا ولا كثرة الذنوب الا فهو صفا نشهد ان لا اله الا هو ولا طوف على العباد بجوده ولا فضل للمذنبين بحلمه ونشهد أن محمدا نبيه وحبيه سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين بعثه رحمة للعالمين. لقد أمركم الله في محكم كتابه بالصلاة على نبيه وحبيبه فقال تعليما لكم وتشريفا للصفية إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وعلى إمام المسلمين وقائد الغور المحجلين أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى سيدة النساء العالمين وبثة خاتم النبيين سيدتنا فاطمة بنت رسول الله صلوات الله عليها وعلى الحسن المجتبى والحسين الشهيد بكربلاء وعلي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي عليه الصلاة والسلام. اللهم صل على مولانا صاحب الزمان ما هي آثار بدء والطغيان هادم أبنية الشرك والنفاق حاسد فر البغي والشقاق صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آبائه الكرام اتصلت الليالي والأيام اللهم عجل فرجا وسهل مخرجا واكحل ناظرنا بنظرة منا إليه واجعلنا من المستشهدين بين يديه وتفضل على أمراء المؤمنين بمزيد التوفيقات وازدياد الإقبال وألوف الدرجات اللهم افعل بنا ما أنت أهل ولا تفعل بنا ما نحن أهله بجاه محمد وآله المعصومين صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين. يذكر فتنفر ذكره إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله ربي. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا بئس مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآيات الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس فتمنوا الموت إن كنتم صادقين ولا يتمنونه أبدا بما قدمت أيديهم والله عليم بالظالمين. قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون. وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائمة قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة والله خير الرازقين. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته يقوم ويقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمد. الله أكبر. ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين بجاه محمد وآله الطاهرين. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
ملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. تسبيح جناب فاطمة الزهراء سلام الله عليها. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. All of us together. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة لابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Jummah Mubarak to you all. Let's recognize the sponsors for today's Jummah lunch. It is Dr. Shahida Ahmed. Please recite a Surah Fatiha for her marhumeen, as well as your marhumeen, including marhuma Masuma bint Ghulam Abbas Hassam, whose second year birthday was yesterday. Please recite a Surah Fatiha for all of them. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Just a reminder of tonight's program. We have Quran Academy and futsal back in action post Ramadan. The children ages 6 to 12 from this Friday, April 19th until June 29th, just before the beginning of the month of Muharram al-Haram. You need to register a child. You can bring and you can register then. And there will be the fees are also mentioned in there for the entire 11 weeks is also mentioned there, so you can go ahead and pay that when you come. So it's a good program where children come here, they attend the Quran Academy, and then after the Quran Academy they go to Sadiq School Gym and they go and play and mingle with other kids. Friday night circle for guys and girls, which happens every Friday, 8 p.m. This is for ages 12 plus. Bring your children, bring your kids, youth. We have youth discussion, sometime led by me, sometime by fellow youth members. And then following that, kids go play basketball in Sadiq School Gym or futsal or whatever they play over there. So that's inshallah starting tonight. Saturday and Sunday, of course, we have Salatul Fajr. As a reminder, 5:30 a.m. we will have the Salat on time. And then following that, we'll have the Quran Circle, followed by the breakfast, and similarly on Sunday we'll have Salat at 5:30, followed by Nahjul Balagha and the breakfast. One community announcement, which is a couple of weeks from now, it's the Majlis of Jahlum for Marhum Sayyid Baqi Rizvi, which will be Saturday, May 4th at Mahfil-e Khurasan. That program will start at 4 p.m. Inshallah, we'll make more announcements as we go forward. Let's recite Dua Sehat for all of those people who are in need of dua, those who are suffering, struggling, going through a difficult time, especially in this time of need, when there's a lot of unrest, especially in parts of the world where we have our holy personalities. And let's keep all of the people in dua. A special dua sihat for Samina Mia, who's in need of dua. Let's recite this ayah karima 5 times. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 وَيَجْعَلُكُمْ خُلَفَاءَ الْأَرْضِ أَإِلَٰهٌ مَّعَ اللَّهِ قَلِيلًا مَّا تَذَكَّرُونَ. اللهم صل. Some empty spaces, please fill in the gaps as we stand up for Salatul Asr. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Aliyan waliyullah. Ashhadu anna Aliyan hujjatullah. Hayya ala salati, hayya ala salah. Hayya ala al-falah, hayya ala al-falah. Hayya ala khayr al-amal. حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر
وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد تسبيح
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأسأله أن يتوب علي توبة عبد ذليل خاضع فقير باعث مسكين مستكين مستجير لا يملك لنفسه نفعا ولا ضرا ولا موتا ولا حياة ولا نشورا اللهم إني أعوذ بك من نفس لا تشبع ومن قلب لا يخشى ومن علم لا ينفع ومن صلاة لا ترفع ومن دعاء لا يسمع اللهم إني أسألك اليسر بعد العسر والفرج بعد الكرب والرخاء بعد الشدة اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
Tojo Ziyarat today recited Ziyarat of Sadiq Ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum ya Nabi Allah ya Rasulullah. Assalamu alaikum ya Amir al-Mu'minin ya Qasim al-Jannati wan Nar. Assalamu alaikum Sayyidina Sallallahu Alameen. Assalamu alaikum Imam Sadiq ayyu wasiyun natiq ayyu faraiq. Assalamu alaikum Sunan al-Azam ayyu Sirat al-Aqwam. Assalamu alaikum ya Misbah al-Zulumat ya Dafi al-Mawzilat ya Miftah al-Khairat ya Ma'adin al-Barakat या साहिब al-Hujaj wad-Dalalat Assalamu alayka ya sahib al-Barahin al-Wazihat Assalamu alayka ya Nasir ad-Dinillah ya Nashir hukmillah ya Fadil al-Khatabat ya Kashif al-Kurbat Assalamu alayka ya Amid as-Sadiqin ya Nisan al-Natiqin ya Khalf al-Khaifin ya Zaim as-Sadiqin as-Salihin Assalamu alayka ya Sayyid al-Muslimin ya Hadi al-Muzallin ya Sakan at-Ta'in अशहदु या मौलाया अन्नका अलल हुदा व उर्तुल वस्का व शम्सु ज़ुहा व बहल मदा व काफ़िल वरा व मसल अला सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि रूह का व बदन का वस्सलाम अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू। अस्सलाम अलैकुम या अहल बैत नबुव्वत जमीअन व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू। अस्सलाम अलैकुम या साहिबल असर व ज़मान या खलीफत रहमान या मज़हरुल ईमान या काबतुल ईमान या तफसीरुल कुरान। अस्सलाम अलैकुम या शरीकुल कुरान। अस्सलाम अलैकुम इमाम ज़माना अज्जलल्लाहु फ़रजक व सह्हलल्लाहु